Hello, everyone. We'll get started in a minute here. Just making sure everybody can get in and that our technology is working well. Can somebody test the mute and let me know if you're able to come off of mute and say hi?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Hey,
Yep.
great.
Hi, all.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. The meeting is being recorded and we'll get started and make sure we have time for everybody's questions. I don't think it'll take us too long to get through our slides, but we do want to make sure everyone has time to answer questions. So my name is Nicole Bahina, and I'm the Vice President of Community Partnerships at All Chicago, and I work closely with a lot of people at All Chicago, but Zach Granberry is on as well, and so we're going to be tag teaming today's presentation. I can only be with you for maybe the first 20 minutes or so before I have to leave for another meeting. So let's go ahead and get started. If people want to put in the chat their names, pronouns, and representation or organization you're with, that would be helpful. You can also feel free to drop your email in there so that we can follow up with any questions that we're not able to answer today, if that's the case. Zach, is there anything else we need the group to discuss before we get into the agenda?
No.
Great. All right, so what we're hoping to do is walk through the HUD CoC Builds NOFO overview, see what questions you all have, and then Zach's going to lead us through the process for what it means to apply. The slides look like they have typos in here, but they really don't. They're just coming up on the screen interestingly, so apologies for that. And then we'll have another chance to have questions and answers towards the end. So let's get into the overview. This is, I think, maybe the second or third year that HUD is running two NOFOs at once. So some of you might be also responding to the regular NOFO for either new projects or renewal projects. But at the same time, we are running what is called the CoC Builds NOFO for the Chicago Continuum of Care. And this NOFO is to help create new permanent supportive housing units. In the whole country, there's an availability of funding of about 175 million, but Chicago can only apply for one project for up to 10 million as the maximum grant amount. And this NOFO is specifically designed to cover capital costs or activities that are associated with acquiring or rehabbing a building. And then it has also an opportunity to build into the application ongoing operations and supportive services for that permanent supportive housing once it is built. So some of the basics are things like eligible applicants. The details can be found at this reference that's on the screen here. And when we send out the slides, you'll be able to click on that to get to the regulations. But it's really nonprofit organizations will probably make up the most of the applications, but state and local governments or those that are instrumentalities of either state or local governments or tribes and public housing agencies are also allowable applicants. My guess is most of you fall into the nonprofit organization category. But if you have questions about what that means, feel free to drop it in the chat or ask when we come to the Q&A part of today. The eligible activities that are allowed to be applied under this NOFO are acquisition, rehab, and new construction. So those are the capital costs, along with rental assistance, supportive services, operating costs, and admin. I think some things to note are, and this might be later in the slides too, but while we're on this slide, the project admin for the NOFO, those costs are always limited to 10% of the overall grant. And then these costs that are really the capital costs need to make up 80% of the grant amount being requested. So this NOFO is really focused on acquisition, rehab, and new construction. If you're here and you only do scattered site permanent supportive housing, this NOFO is not for you. It is really for agencies that have extensive experience in acquiring, rehabbing, or new construction builds of permanent supportive housing. Great. So here's where we get into some of the budget. Maybe I mentioned a few of these things already, but the majority of the funding requests must be for capital costs. So that's about the minus the 20 and 10% for admin and other funds. So no more than 20% of the total funds can be for other CoC program budget line items. No more than 10% of the total funds requested can include administrative costs. It does require a 25% match, either cash or in kind. And there is a 15-year use requirement that you can read more about in this section. You'll be able to click on that link when we send the slides. Great. And Michael, I see your hand. I just have two more slides, or a couple more slides, and then we'll turn to questions, and I can go back to those slides as well. So who can go into these buildings once they're built? Well, this is a CoC program, and so they do require people to be experiencing homelessness and have a documented disability. So the requirements are here, but basically definition of homelessness according to the HUD regulations, it can be for categories 1, 2, or 4. Those of you that run CoC grants are very familiar with this rule already, and if you need more information, we can talk about it during the Q&A. HUD does, through the NOFO, encourage the use of existing structures if that's possible, either adapting those or converting those, things like hotels, motels, or office and retail space. So they mention that in the NOFO. I can't find a place in the NOFO where they actually incentivize that through more points. Zach, let me know if you've found that in the NOFO anywhere, but they do state it as a priority. And so if you're thinking about a building that is going to use an existing structure, please make sure to notate that in the RFI. Great. And then there's a lot of confusion nationally about who is actually applying for this project, because it's unlike the regular CoC grants through eSNAPs. It's a little bit different. And so some of the things we know are that there is going to be one primary project applicant that will complete the application and required forms. The application is really, I think it's 15 pages, but like a narrative. And this is the application that goes to HUD. And All Chicago will submit it on behalf of the CoC. The project applicant can have multiple subrecipients who will carry out the capital costs. So you might partner with another agency. You might have other types of subrecipients that will carry out costs once the building is up and running. And so those are acceptable things. Once we go through the RFI process and we figure out who the application is, they're going to submit it to the collaborative applicant, which is All Chicago, and then we'll help shepherd the application process to be submitted through grants.gov. Great. And then we'll get into the RFI process in a minute, but I just want to share a little bit about why we are running an RFI process instead of an RFP or an RFA process. And that is because we, as the continuum of care, want to figure out how many applications are even meet the threshold criteria and how many agencies are interested in responding to this. And it might be that there's just a few, and running a whole competitive process doesn't necessarily make sense. And maybe those two want to partner together to go in for one application for the full 10 million. So the RFI is really just to figure out what agencies are interested in this funding so that the CoC can make the best decision about where we go from here. And so Zach will talk more about the RFI process, but it really is just trying to figure out how many projects would be interested and position the CoC to be the most competitive in the national competition. So applications will go in via grants.gov. Again, this is later after the RFI process, but you should be already thinking about registering with sam.gov and grants.gov because that can take a while. And so if you're selected by Chicago to go forward, you need to have those in place. And there's a Word document template that we would ask you to submit. And again, there has to be only one application per CoCs, per each CoC. And so that's why we're going to be working closely with the respondents to the RFI to figure out the best case going forward. So that's a little bit about the NOFO. I want to pause here and see what questions people have already. Michael, we'll start with you.
Perfect. So The 25% match, that's not for the capital costs, that's just for the other items. Is that correct?
My understanding is that it's a 25% match for the entire grant amount.
Okay.
We can double check that in the NOFO and
That's
put
correct.
it in the chat. That's what I thought too, right, Zach? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Other questions? It can be cash or in kind. And Andrew asked a great question. Are there operating dollars once open? Yes, you can apply for up to 20% of the $10 million to be for supportive services or operating costs once the building is up and running. Katie asked, does the CoC assist with the 25% match, or is that the sole responsibility of the nonprofit? That is the sole responsibility of the applicant that is applying, based on my conversations with entities like the Chicago Department of Housing and the state's Department of IDA. Most of the projects that are going to meet the threshold criteria for responding to this NOFO are already going to have some financing secured, and that financing can make up the match. You can also match the service dollars and operations dollars through other sources. Actually, I can put the HUD guidelines about match. They have a lot of really good ideas in there about where the match can come from. So I'll drop that in there as well. But basically, any project that is applying can leverage a lot of other funding sources and or in-kind donations. Great. Someone asked, is there a $10 million limit for Chicago? That's right. So basically, every CoC is allowed to apply for up to a maximum amount that HUD sets that at. And for Chicago, it's $10 million. I'm going to answer two more questions in the chat and then go to Michael, then Perry. So Pamela McKenzie is asking, the 20% for non-capital costs like rental assistance, is that then eligible for renewal every 2 years like other existing CoC projects? That's a great question. And we have been told by HUD that the intention is that any operating rental assistance and services dollars that are awarded as part of this NOFO would roll into the annual or biannual process for regular CoC projects. Like anything, they can't promise it though, because HUD doesn't appropriate their own money. So there has to be enough money for that to be the case. But they did note it in the NOFO that that's the intention. Great. And then the cash amount, that seems right to me. And Zach, maybe you can just do the math to make sure what Claudia put in there is the 25% amount for if you're applying for a full $10 million. Great. Michael.
Can that match be to the subrecipient?
Meaning the subrecipient could
So
serve as the match?
Yeah, right. If the developer is bringing other dollars in for, the capital costs, that would be part of the project. So
yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, we would just have to make sure it meets all of the requirements for the link I just dropped in there. But as long as it's any grant from private, local, state, federal resources, cash resources, revenue from other types of activities, and they're willing to say that this is committed to the project, then you should be good to go. Perry?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. So I'm just trying to understand this 20%. So my understanding in this round, this $10 million competition, it's just for capital. And then once you build the building, you come back later and apply for the remaining portion, or?
No, the full, yeah. So like, let's just say that you wanted to make sure you had $1 million in case management and operating. You would today put in an application for 9 million of capital costs and 1 million of operating and services costs. So the $10 million is the max, and within that you should build in, even though you're not going to use those resources for the first couple of years while you're building, you still have to build into that $10 million the amount that you want to go towards operating and services.
Thank you.
And thanks, Zach, so Claudia, I had left off a 0 from confirming the amount. So it's 25% of 10 is 2.5. Pamela, question?
Oh, sorry, that was an accident.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions about what the NOFO says? Okay, I'm going to answer Claudia's question and then pass it on to Zach to talk through the CoC NOFO builds process and how we're running the application process for Chicago. But Claudia, your question is a good one because I think it'll it's a good transition talking point. Basically, if your agency doesn't think that you would eat up all 10 million of the dollars, maybe you have a project that, you just need $5 million for. That's okay to note that in the response that you put in, because again, what we're trying to do here with this request for interest is just get a sense of how many projects could eat up the whole 10 million. Maybe there's 5 projects that only need $1 million, and we would, sort of figure out how to put them together, and then we would only apply for that much. And so I think focus less on the dollar amount and more on what do you need to complete projects that are already sort of in the works. And you'll find very quickly once you get into the RFI that you'll see that, if you're an agency that has never done development projects, or you have just an idea of a project, but not a site identified yet, and not an architect already identified and some of the work done, this is probably, this funding is not going to really align with when you with your project readiness state. So from our read of what HUD wants to see is they want to see this fill a hole of a project that is pretty well thought out of already. And so you'll see the questions there are really tailored towards that. I will say, I'm not sure if we have a slide on it, but when we asked HUD the question about the timing of the grant award, they said that they expect to make announcements that this funding would come to Chicago if we win the funding. They would probably make that announcement in early 2025, and the money would hit the ground later towards the end of 2025. And so that's sort of, we need to find projects that fit that very specific window of when they would be able to utilize the funding. And Pamela, I think there is not, we can double check and Zach can confirm, but I do not think there is a chronic homeless stuff requirement here. But there is every PSH project that's got CoC funding, and it does have to have homelessness and at least one person in the family with a disability.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Zach Granberry, Senior Program Manager at All Chicago. So to piggyback off of Pamela's, off Nicole's answer to Pamela's question, yes. So there isn't a chronic homelessness requirement, but yes, all PSH projects must have participants who are homeless or have a disability, which falls within those 1, 2, and 4 categories of homelessness that HUD has stated. So I will be talking to you all about the Chicago CoC Builds NOFO process. Nicole, I don't know if you want me to start to share or.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why don't we do that since I have to leave halfway through the meeting. So I'll pull down my slides.
Give me one moment. Okay. And we are here. All right, so this is the steps for the NOFO, for the CoC Builds NOFO process. So today, thank you for everyone who has attended the webinar. This is the first step. The next step in the process will be releasing the request for information. So Nicole went over the purpose of why our CoC is having a request for information. We plan to release this survey, which will be via Alchemy. If not by the end of today, it will be early tomorrow, where we'll send out an email blast to everyone in the CoC and to all who have attended as well. So this process, and I'll speak more to it in a second. The next step will be the CoC, that's just a request for a proposal, which is an invite only, which Nicole mentioned as well. So for everyone who submits a RFI, there will be a committee, which I'll speak about, that will review those submissions, and then you will then get an email from us, from All Chicago, as a collaborative applicant of the CoC to apply through the RFP. And then after that, there will be All Chicago will work to make sure that we complete the CoC Builds NOFO and submit it via grants.gov. So here's the actual timeline of everything to make it a little easier to understand. So with the RFI process, we, as mentioned, plan to release it today. As I show you the application, there's a few things that we're trying to fix on the logic part of it, but it should come out by the end of the day or no later than tomorrow morning. And then there will be a 2-week period of completing the RFI. So by September 20th will be the deadline for the RFI to be submitted to us via Alchemy. And then we will get a response from us one way or another the week of September 25th. And then we will get into phase 2, which is the request for proposal, which will release on September 25th. We will give roughly 3 weeks, almost a month period, to complete the RFA, which will be October 18th, 2024, which is a Friday. And then the subgroup will review during that time frame, and then you will get a response the week of November 1st. By November 1st, which is a Friday as well. And then we'll get into phase 3, which will be HUD CoC Builds NOFO piece, where the collaborative applicant, which is All Chicago, will complete the actual application based on those selected agencies and projects information that was submitted. And then we will post it on the CoC website for review on November 18th. And then we will meet HUD's submission, which is November 21st. At 10:59 Central Time on November 21st. And just keynotes that all the applications will be submitted via Alchemy. This is the preferred system and the system that we use for all of our new project and renewal project process for NOFO funding. So if you have any questions or if anything isn't working, please make sure that you can email me directly. I think that would probably be the best thing to do, is to email me directly, and I'll put my email in the chat. But you can also email CoC programs at allchicago.org as well if I am not available. And then there will be a sub work group. Prioritization selection work group is our current committee that reviews all new project applications that's submitted through the CoC NOFO process. But we have a subgroup that will be specifically reviewing these applications, and members of this subgroup will make sure that they meet the CoC conflict of interest policy, making sure that they're not connected to anyone who is applying for funding. And there are individuals who are on the committee who specialize in reviewing applications for agencies that are applying for PSH development. throughout the city. So they will be reviewing the RFIs and the RFP applications. And then just a reminder again that the HUD deadline is November 21st at 10:59 Central. So I don't know if there's any questions before we look at the actual RFI. Okay. So now I'm going to show you more of the back end of it. But if you have applied for any CoC funding over the course of 2 to 3 years, if not more, then you have applied using a survey link via Alchemer. I'm showing you the back end, but essentially when you review the application, it will look like this, giving you an intro of the purpose of this RFI, which we've discussed, the $10 million, in which that is the max for our CoC. If you have read anything regarding this NOFO, there are areas around the country where there is money aside for smaller populations, around 2.5 million people. But of course, our CoC supersedes that. The total amount of funding that is going out nationwide is $175 million. And the way that HUD explains on how they're breaking it up is kind of like in a 2-year process, where $100 million is going out the first year, 75 is going out in the second year. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to remain the case, but that's the way that it was originally explained. But again, that means $10 million is the max for our CoC. Not sure exactly how that would be broken out in a 2-year period. But and just clear details. So again, a reminder, September 20th is the deadline to submit this RFI. And then the breakdown in which we just gave on the slides. And then any links, any questions or anything that you want to know about the CoC builds, there are links here to review, or any questions regarding PSH, the program component itself. There are resources and links there, and of course about capital costs, since this is focused around capital costs. So in the next section is going to be focused around agency information, which is the key information about your organization. So you're filling that out, and then we get to the third page, which is threshold questions, which are just key elements that you need to apply for this funding, which is stated in the CoC Builds NOFO document that is on HUD Exchange website. So a few questions. If you select no to any of these questions, it will not allow you to continue the link. This means that you are not eligible to apply for the CoC CoC Builds NOFO. Then there's a section on organizational experience. So it's going to ask you this. Now, this is where right now you're seeing this aspect of it, but we're working to make it easier for user-friendly. So when you enter this information, so this question is asking how many developments have your organization completed in the past 5 years, which I'll fix that. 5 years. You will enter the number here, but on the next question, what we're trying to do is make it so that you can fill out this information per development. So if you enter in 4 here, you get the opportunity to, once you fill out 1, that it will repeat itself so that you can enter in multiple developments. So there's questions asking about your funding sources, and if there is other that is not part of this list, this drop-down list, you can write it in as well here. So there will be just more questions asking you about the entire development or development that you have done in the past, experience in the past, along with what you are currently applying for. And then in this section, you will be specific about that project. And there's more of the same as far as the process of once you enter in information, hopefully that it repeats itself so that you don't have to do any additional steps, that it will just automatically populate and you can put as many projects that you are currently applying for through this process. Let's see. But essentially, this is the application, and I think this is it. I want to say, yeah, that's it. So, yes. So that is the end of the application. So it may look a little lengthy, but actually it is a brief process. But if you have any questions, the floor is open. Go ahead, Sherry.
What outcome are you, I know with some of the applications that you with the other previous versions of it, you can't go back, you can't save and go back. Is that the same one with this one? So you have to leave it open?
No. So we fixed that. Yeah. So definitely appreciate individuals who have commented on that. We fixed that issue. So you'll see at the upper right-hand corner, there will say save and continue later, and then you will be able to put your name and your email address, so it'll send you a copy via email.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Matter of fact, I think I could. I'm pulling up a. I'm gonna go out to the actual app to show you, but okay. Can you send a link to apply? Katie, that's a good question. Well, the thing, we can't share the link right now. We are working on the back end to fix a few things, but I mean, if people want the link now, we can definitely share the link now. Just I wouldn't want to complete the application until some till later today when a blast goes out. Says, does a applicant need to be in good standing with the CoC, so up to date on dues? That's a good question, Michael. So the answer is yes. Bless you. Yes. So when it comes to applying for any CoC funding, we have put in the application, just making sure that all agencies that apply are in good standing with the CoC. So for those who may be new, what does that mean? That means that if you are a current CoC member, that your dues are up to date. If you are not a CoC member, but you want to apply for funding, that means that you can apply to be a CoC member and pay your dues based on your membership status, which we have on our WOW Applicant. Shatoya, can you do me a favor? Can you put that link in the chat? The dues, the membership dues. Okay. All right. So we'll put that link in the chat. So for anyone who's new to the process. So great question, Michael. Anyone else? Yes, Britt. So yes, so to apply for CoC funding, you have to be a member of the CoC. And we're putting the link in the chat, so it's so click the link and it's a straightforward process. There aren't any other questions.
If there aren't any other questions, you can always reach out to, again, to the CoC programs at allchicago.org email address, or you can email me directly at zgranberry@allchicago.org to answer any questions around the CoC Builds process. And if anything is going wrong with the application as well, you can reach out directly to me.
This recording be available?
I'm sorry, say that again, Sherry.
When would this recording be available?
Oh, the recording. The goal is to get this out today. If not by the end of today, it will be early tomorrow. What I would love to do is make sure that the application is 100% good, and for you to have everything at once, more so than release them kind of sporadically.
Thank you.
But no later than tomorrow morning. All right. Well, thank you all for attending this webinar. Really appreciate it. And go ahead, Mike.
Nope. False hand raise.
Sounds good. Well, everyone take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day.